Donc on accueille cette fois-ci pour la première fois ce meet-up. Je suis super contente de pouvoir l'accueillir d'ailleurs parce que je suis une grande admiratrice du NLP. J'adore ça. Donc on est Xebia. On est une société de conseil qui aimons faire les choses bien. Je ne vais pas vous en dire beaucoup plus, mais on travaille sur beaucoup de problématiques, dont la data. Et donc on est là pour partager des choses et c'est pour ça aussi que l'esprit Meetup, c'est quelque chose que nous aimons et ce n'est pas le seul Meetup d'ailleurs qu'on accueille. Juste un petit mot aussi pour vous parler donc de la prochaine conférence qu'on va organiser. C'est une conférence qu'on fait chaque année. Donc je ne me mets pas devant. La Xebicon. Donc cette année, ce sera le 20 novembre au Palais Brognard. Pour info, c'est une conférence qui parle sur beaucoup de domaines où il y a pas mal de participants. On essaye à chaque fois, chaque année, d'en ramener un petit peu plus. On essaye aussi de faire que... en gros, c'est les Xebians, donc les personnes qui travaillent chez Xebia, qui font les talks. Et on invite aussi quelques entreprises dont on est partenaire pour présenter en gros les projets sur lesquels on travaille. Et il y aura quelques conférences, je pense, autour du NLP. Et aussi, je crois que c'est tout. Oui. Pour info, on a un petit code de réduction de 20%, donc qui sont juste derrière les organisateurs, si ça vous intéresse, qui fonctionnera. Alors, j'ai pas, c'est une question bête, mais j'ai pas demandé jusqu'à quand. Mais donc en ce moment, il y a encore les early birds, comme ils disent, jusqu'à encore 10 jours. Donc ça fait la place à pas trop cher, je crois dans les 50. 43. Voilà. J'en dis pas plus et je vais laisser la place aux organisateurs. Merci à vous et bonne soirée.
Okay. Hello everyone. So welcome to this first edition of the new season of Paris Meetup. First of all, we would like to thank Xebia for hosting this meetup. So thank you to them. I think we can applaud them also for this. And then, so tonight, I have to tell you that one of the speakers has canceled yesterday, so we only have two talks tonight, but two great talks. And I will let the place to Guillaume Lample, who is for the first speak, who is so PhD student at Facebook AI Research in Paris, and he's doing his PhD in so with the UPMC University also, and he will tonight present his last paper called Unsupervised Machine Translation, and this paper has won the Best Paper Award at the coming EM and NLP conference, so in I think in October. So. Thank you, Guillaume, to be here first, and then. Thanks.
Hi everyone, so thank you for inviting me here tonight. So I'm Guillaume, I am a PhD student in Facebook and in UPMC University, and tonight I will talk about unsupervised machine translation. So this is some work we did with a colleague from Facebook, so Maël, Alexis, Ludovic and Marc Aurelio. So I'm not only talk about our last paper, but mostly a couple of papers we published that are around this topic. So first of all, what is unsupervised machine translation? So this is a task of creating a machine translation system between two languages, assuming that you have no resources in one of these languages. For instance, let's say you have some books, they are written in some language, you don't know anything about this language. How would you do to translate them into English? For instance, it can be some ancient language, or even if you had, like, hypothetically, some alien language written in some books, how would you translate this into English, assuming you have no dictionary or anything like this? So why do we want to do this? So the motivation is that if you look at state-of-the-art results in machine translation, we have that neural approaches do perform very well today. State-of-the-art model in some language pairs are very close of human performance. For instance, like in English-French or English-German, the performance of our models are very close of human translators. But the thing is that this is only true for very few number of language pairs. For instance, if you consider languages like Vietnamese or Norwegian, so these languages have a lot of speakers, but still the amount of parallel resources in these languages is pretty low, and the performance of machine translation in these languages is pretty low. But the thing is that there is something which is very easy to find. It's monolingual data. So for instance, if you take all these languages here, like Vietnamese and everything, you can find hundreds of thousands of Wikipedia articles. So it's very easy to collect and to gather some monolingual data. So another question is, what can you do with this monolingual data? So can you use it to improve a machine translation system? So traditionally, MT systems, they are trained with parallel datasets. So a parallel dataset is basically a set of, let's say, English sentences. And for each sentence, you have the translation into French. So you basically train your model with this. So what can you do with monolingual data? So there are a couple of papers that try to answer these questions. How can you improve MT system with monolingual data? So can you kind of equivalently reduce the amount of supervision you need to get a good MT system? But in our case, we are interested in the last question, which is, can we learn even without any supervision at all? So where in the case where you have some language, let's say some data in English, you have some data in some language, you don't know anything about it, so how do you do to translate this into English? So the outline of the talk is going to be pretty simple. So first, I'm going to very quickly summarize what people do in a semi-supervised sentence translation, which is also known as weakly supervised machine translation, which is a case where you have a little bit of parallel sentences and a lot of monolingual data. Then I'm going to talk about unsupervised word translation, which is the task of creating a dictionary between two languages, assuming you have no resources. So it's kind of an easy test. I mean, if you are not able to do unsupervised word translation, if you're not able to translate at word level, there is no hope that you can actually translate at sentence level. And finally, I will tackle the final task, which is unsupervised sentence translation, and I'm going to present quickly two approaches. So first, for the semi-supervised sentence translation, so semi-supervised means that you have a little bit of supervision. For instance, here, let's say you have a little small parallel dataset of English-French. But let's say that you also have a lot of French sentence. And for this sentence, you don't have the translation. So here, what you can do if you want to create an MT system from English to French, instead of training directly a system that goes from English to French, you can actually train a model in the opposite direction. So you train a model from French to English. And then what you are going to do is that you are going to translate your French sentences into English. So then you basically created here a parallel dataset. So it's an English to French parallel dataset, where these sentences are noisy because they are basically created by your model, but still you have a very big data set which is a little bit noisy. And now what happens is that you can take this data set you generated and you can train a system from English to French using the concatenation of these two parallel data sets, so the one you had initially and the one you generated. And now it happens that it appears that if you train a system on this generated data, you're going to get a much better performance than if you were just to train an English to French system on this small block here. So it's a very, very simple technique. You just need to have monolingual sentences. And what you can even do is that you can, if you have sentences in English, you can actually repeat this process in the two directions, which is that here we use the French data to create a better English to French system. But what you can do is that if you also have some English sentences, some like monolingual corpus in English, you can repeat the same process in the opposite direction. So you can use this English to French system you created to translate some English sentences to French, and then you can train a new system from French to English. And you can actually reiterate this process, like first train a model English to French, then French to English, then English to French, and you can reiterate this until convergence. So it's very simple, and in practice it works much better than just training on the parallel data. So now for the unsupervised word translation. So first, I'm going to talk also about weakly supervised things. So I'm going to talk about weakly supervised word translation. So all the idea of our papers and our research was inspired by this paper of Mikolov in 2013, which is exploiting similarities among languages for machine translation. So in this paper, what they did is that they realized that if you take, let's say you have some text in English and you have some text in Italian, what you can do is train some word embeddings. You can train some word embeddings using something like fast text or fast word2vec, for instance. And what you can do is that, if you look at these monolingual spaces you are going to get, they're going to be very similar. And in practice, in this paper, they realize that you can actually learn a very simple mapping that is going to take your English embeddings and that can map them to your Italian embeddings. So in the paper, they try to make this alignment using some feed-forward neural network, but then they realize that you can actually, the mapping between these two sets of embeddings is much simpler than we thought. You can actually have just a linear mapping, so you can learn a matrix W that will actually take your English embeddings and map them to the embeddings in Italian. And later on, people realize that you can actually make a constraint on W. You can actually assume that W is orthogonal. And if you put this restriction that W has to be orthogonal, you are actually going to get the same performance. So not only these spaces of embeddings are very similar, but they are actually totally the metric. So you are going to learn some English embeddings and some Italian embeddings that are actually going to be exactly the same. They're just going to be in some different position in the space. So what they did is that, so we are in the weakly supervised case. So they basically created a dictionary. They took a dictionary of 5,000 word pairs. So you have, for instance, let's say you have like a cat on the profundo. So they have, let's say, 5,000 word translation. They are going to create two matrices, X and Y, where X is going to be the matrix with the English embeddings, and Y is going to be the matrix with your Italian embeddings. So X and Y are going to be two matrices of size basically 5,000 times D. So for X, the first row is going to be the embedding of cat. For Y, the first row is going to be the embedding of gato, and you do this for your 5,000 pairs of words. And then you can actually compute the matrix W that minimizes the distance between WX and Y. So you can optimize this using SG or something. But then if you put the constraint that if you put the constraint then W has to be orthogonal, then you have actually a very simple solution to this, which is a closed form solution. It's called the Procrustes problem. So with the Procrustes solution, you can actually compute W using the SVD of Y and X transpose. So later I will refer to the baseline as basically the Procrustes solution, which was the state-of-the-art method for the word translation task. And now what you can do is that if you create this embedding W, you can take some words that are not in your dictionary, some new words that you don't have in your small parallel words, and you can map them to the target space, you can map them to the source space, make a projection, and it appears that in the target space, the nearest neighbor is going to be a very relevant translation. So if you take a word like, let's say, dog, you get an embedding for dog, which is going to be XS, the embedding of the source word. You map this to the target space, and you look at the word YT in the target space, which is the closest to this. It's some nearest neighbor in terms of the cosine distance. And this word is, in French, is going to be like typically chien or something like this. So it's a very simple approach to create some parallel dictionary. So another thing, what we wanted to do is create this mapping in some unsupervised way. Because if you look at this, it's pretty obvious that we are in dimension 2. It's pretty clear you can take X, make a simple rotation, and you're going to get Y. But in practice, these embeddings are not in dimension 2, they're in dimension 300. So it's not easy to make this mapping. So we have to find an algorithm that actually makes this mapping for us in some unsupervised way. So our reasoning was that if really WX and Y are exactly aligned, then what happens, if you're able to make some alignment like this, is that if you sample something from either WX or from Y, you will not be able to predict where this embedding is coming from. If really the two spaces are aligned, then if you look at them, you should not be able to tell them apart. You should not be able to say this word is in X, this word is in Y. So to do this, to address this thing, we basically train a discriminator. So this discriminator is kind of a classifier, and we're going to train it to predict that everything which is in WX, so all the WXY, we are going to train it to predict that this is actually source words. And everything which is in Y, we are going to train it to predict that this is basically a target word. So we train this discriminator, and at the same time we train some mapping. We train W. So when we train W, so we are going to train it to basically fool the discriminator. So it's some adversarial game. So on one side, you have the discriminator that tries to make the difference between WX and Y. And at the same time, you have W that tries to fool the discriminator to prevent it from making accurate predictions. So basically, the loss here is the same as this one. Here, you just, in this case, when you optimize W, you fix the discriminator here, and you basically update this one to make the discriminator believe that this X is actually a target word. And same, you train W to make the discriminator believe that Y are actually a source word. So if you do this, you can actually use all the techniques we have in generative adversarial networks to train this thing. And in the end, you are going to get, so if you look at what happens on the word translation task, so we have this. So here, the task is, you have 200,000 target words, and you have a few English words. The task is to take an English word and to see whether you can find the correct translation or not. So you take a word, and you see So you take your word, you get an embedding, you map it to the target space, and you look at how often this translation you get is a good translation. So if you were to try to guess randomly, you will get only like one chance over 200,000 to get the good translation. But here in practice, so we have two results here, two sets of results for different language pairs. So the blue thing is the ProCrust baseline. So this is the thing I showed before where you have a small supervision of 5,000 word pairs. And in red, this is the mapping you get with W. So here you can see that in English-Spanish, the first column, you get 69.8% accuracy, which means that in English-Spanish, you can translate 70% of the word correctly, even though initially you had absolutely no information about basically the Spanish corpus here. And so here we can see that the ProCrust method is still a little bit better. So what we did is that we wanted to use this mapping that we created, this initial W that we obtained using training. And what we did is that we took it to create a new dictionary. So if you look at English-Spanish, we have 70% accuracy, which means that if we take all the English words and translate them to Spanish, 70% of our dictionary is going to be correct. So we are going to get basically a noisy dictionary where 70% of the translation are correct. In practice, it happens that if you apply ProCrust on this dictionary that you just created, then you are going to get actually a better mapping than the mapping you initially had with the adversarial training. So since this mapping is going to be better, it will give you a better dictionary. And with this better dictionary, you can actually get a better mapping, and then again a new better dictionary. So you can actually repeat these two processes. You can repeat this step where you first generate a dictionary, get a new mapping, get a new dictionary, etc. So if you repeat this thing, in the end, you are going to get these results. So now in English-Spanish, we have like 79%, which is actually better than the baseline. And in French-English, we get this like plus 17 improvement, which means that in French-English, for instance, we are able to translate 80% of French words with the correct 80% of the time we have the correct translation. So here, what is kind of nice is that we actually do better than the baseline, which is basically the supervised state-of-the-art approach, even though we are completely unsupervised. So even though we have no supervision, we do better than methods with supervision. Yes, so to summarize, there are a few steps here. So the first step is you take your English and your Italian monolingual datasets, you train some word embeddings, then you align them roughly with the adversarial training. So adversarial training gives some good mapping, but it is not perfect. And you use it to generate some actually translation dictionary. You use it to create some high confidence translation pairs. And then you can actually apply the ProCrust supervised method on your generated dictionary. And you can reiterate over these two. And if there is just something to remember over this first part of the talk, it is that if you have two monolingual datasets in two languages, using this method, you can actually create high-quality cross-lingual dictionaries between these two languages, and equivalently, you can create some high-quality cross-lingual embeddings. If you have the dictionary, you can actually use ProCrust solution to get the embeddings, and if you have the embeddings, you can take a word, project it, look at the nearest neighbor to get the translation. So these two things are equivalent. So now that we have unsupervised word translation, so how can we actually use this to do some unsupervised sentence translation? So there is a naive approach, which is basically just do some simple word-by-word translation, but we hope we can do better than this. So what I'm going to present is a neural approach, which we had in this paper in iClear last year, on this phrase-based approach that we actually published recently at EMNLP, which is actually much, much simpler and actually gives better results. So first of all, so can we actually do the same thing that we did for words, but for sentences? Can we use the same algorithm, but instead of having some word embeddings, we have some sentence embeddings? So there are several reasons why we can do this. So the problem is that this method is only doing retrieval, which is that if you have some input, you can actually only get an output among the target set. So for instance, you are not going to generate a word translation if this word is not in the target set, but here it's basically the same. If you are translating, if you have an input sentence, you can get an embedding for it. You can align it to the target space, but this will actually return you as translation the nearest neighbor. So you are not going to generate a new sentence. This model could only return you a sentence which is close to your input, but it's not going to be the same translation. Even if you had 10 million points, you will not have like all the sentences. You will only have 10 million sentences. So this will not be a good system. And the other reason why we can do this is that we don't know how to create sentence embeddings today. I mean, we have very efficient method for word embeddings. We have like so many papers. It has been studied for quite a while. But word embedding is something that, sentence embedding is something that we are still investigating, and it's really not on par with the word representation so far. So we can do this. So what we did is still a little bit inspired from this idea. we basically took an autoencoder of sentences. So an autoencoder is going to be a model where you have an encoder that takes as input a source sentence, like X source. It will create this source, which is basically a latent representation. So here you have vectors that represent your sentence. And then we train a decoder to reconstruct the original sentence given this latent representation. So in practice, in NLP, if you train this model, it's not going to work very well. I mean, it will work actually very well. You will have a model that will actually just perfectly copy all your words one by one, but it will not learn relevant representation. So this source you are going to get in the end is not going to be interesting. So to prevent the model from doing something completely trivial, which is just copying the word one by one, what we do is that we actually put some noise on the input sentences. So it's basically a denoising autoencoder. So people have used that in Vision for quite a while to make their model more robust. So in Vision, you can actually just like modify your pixels a little bit, but here you have some words. So what we do is that we actually drop some words from the input. For instance, if your input sentence is this one, Arizona was the first to introduce such a requirement, you're going to remove the word introduce, you're going to feed the model with this. Arizona was the first to such a requirement, and then you're going to tell the decoder that given this input of this sentence, it should be able to reconstruct and find back the missing word. So if, for instance, for us, human, it's pretty easy to like guess what words could have been here, but we want to train the model to develop this same kind of intuition about language and to learn something, I mean, basically to learn the language model aspect of the decoder. So we also have some other types of noise. One is like word shuffling. So if we have an input sentence, we are going to slightly reorder the word in the sentence. Similarly, like if you have English and French, the word order is a little bit different. So here we actually modify the words not too much. Like the first word is not going to appear in the last position, but like one word might appear in like a position which is like 2 or 3 words away from its initial position. And we do this for the target side as well. So we train basically these 2 autoencoders, like separately. You train the source autoencoder, you train the target autoencoders in parallel. And now what we do is that we actually introduce a discriminator here. So the discriminator, it will be trained on top of the encoder output, and we are train it to predict whether a latent vector is coming either from the source or from the target size, the target distribution, sorry. So we train it to make this classification. So if you train this discriminator on this autoencoders alone, it's going to be actually a very simple task. Usually you have that the source autoencoder is going to output latent vectors here, the target one will output vectors here. So what we are going to do is that we are going to train the autoencoders to not only reconstruct sentences, but also to fool the discriminator. So here, we train this to classify whether this or this is a source or a target vector. We train the autoencoders to reconstruct noisy sentences, but we also train the encoders to fool the discriminator, which means that if you train this model end-to-end, at the end, what you are going to get is that if you take a source sentence, you get source sentence X source, you get some this source latent representation, and what happens is that if you feed this source not to the source decoder, but to the target decoder, then if your encoder is able to actually fool the discriminator properly, it means that this will actually be aligned. The Z source here will be aligned with the Z target of the translation. So if you feed this source to the target decoder, then you are going to get actually a translation of your input sentence, which means that with this, you can actually translate, you can make a translation from source to target, even though you have only used monolingual sentences at training time. So if you do this, it will work. It will not work amazing, but it will work. So in practice, we do a couple of things to make the model better. So what we do is that we share the parameters of actually the encoder and the decoder. So here you have, I have 2 blocks, but this model and this model are actually identical. These ones are actually also identical. We share all the parameters. And the point of doing the unsupervised word translation before was that if we want to share the encoders, there is something which we need to share, which is the lookup table. So basically for all your words in your source vocabulary and all your words in your target vocabulary, you need to have some embedding, so some vectors that represents your words. And if you want your encoders to be shared, you need to share this lookup table as well. So typically you want that the embedding of dog and chien, you want them to be the same. So this is why you use the cross-lingual word embeddings you created with the previous method to actually create some shared lookup table. So you have some embedding representations that are shared in your encoder. But there is still a problem here, which is that at test time, what you do is to do some source to target and target to source translation. But during the training, you only do some noisy source to source, noisy target to target. So what we do is that we want to train the model to do what it will actually do at the end, which is basically translation. But we can't do source to target to source because we actually don't have parallel sentences. So what we do here is that we actually since we don't have parallel data, we are going to generate parallel data. So this model, I was telling you, it's working a little bit, but not amazing. So what we do is that we still use it to generate some translation. So during training, what we will do is that we are going to take a target sentence, so X target. We will translate it using the current model we have, which is not so good. We are going to get a translation which is going to be like Y bar. So for instance, if the input sentence is this sentence, une photo d'une rue bondée en ville, you may get this translation, like a photo of a street crowded in a city, so it works a bit, but it's not perfect. And then what you will do is that you will train your model on this, basically, on this Y bar source X target. So you will say, okay, if you see this input sentence, it means that the translation is this. So you basically use these sentence pairs, you use this sentence pair as if it was actually a correct translation. So you train your model on this sentence pair that you generate on the fly. And you do it both ways. So you train your source to target and your target to source model in parallel. So you are also going to take a source sentence, X source, you get a translation Y bar target, you feed it to the encoder, you get this, and then you tell the decoder, given that, you should be able to recover the original X source sentence that was given. And yeah, and that's it. And now if you do this, so just to summarize, so we have a couple of things. One is to learn some denoising autoencoder to learn some good sentence representation. One is to use this adversarial training to be sure that the encoder of the source encoder output and the target encoder output are basically matching. And then you use this cross-lingual training, which is basically this on-the-fly back translation, where you generate parallel data on the fly to train your model. Yeah. So just now very quickly about the phrase-based approach. So this approach is actually much simpler. So what you do here, so first of all, just a quick summary on phrase-based statistical machine translation, so PBSMT approaches. So this is what people were using before neural approaches. So like up to 5 years ago, this was still state-of-the-art approaches. It was used in production by most companies, but now we have NMT approaches. But the thing is that this PBSMT are still actually more efficient than neural approaches if you work on language pairs for which you don't have a lot of parallel sentences. Like in English, French, you can find hundreds of thousands of parallel sentences, and for these languages, like NMT is better. But if you only have access to 100,000 sentence pairs, then it's still better to use these old models. So what they do is that they have two components, essentially. I mean, they have other ones, but the main components are a phrase table. So a phrase table is going to be a list of phrase pairs. So a phrase in English is not a sentence, it's like a group of words, like a group of 2-3 words, for instance, like la voiture rouge, etc. And for each of these phrases, you are going to get a translation. So for instance, you will have la voiture rouge, the red car, like the cat, le chat, etc. And for each of these phrase pair, you have some score. So you are going to get a score between 0 and 1, which is a score that reflects basically the quality of this phrase pair. And then you have a language model. So the language model is something that will take a sentence and predict, and that will actually tell whether this sentence is fluent in the target language. And yeah, and that's it. And now if you have a sentence like this in German, what you do is that you split this sentence into phrases. For instance, like 5 phrases. You are going to, if you take the first one naturally, you will get all the possible translations. So here you select of course. And what you will do is that you will use the language model to do some reordering. For instance, like if you do of course John has fun with the game, it's going to sound more English than if you actually output directly of course has John fun with the game. So you use this language model on these phrase table scores to output the sentence that actually maximize the score given by the phrase table plus the score given by the language model. So that's basically how it works. And if you look at these two components, so for the language model, you don't need any parallel data. For the language model, you just need to have sentences in the target domain. So if you generate English, you just need English data. So here, the only components in the phrase-based models that need parallel sentences are actually the phrase table, which means that if you are able to create this phrase table in some unsupervised way, then you can actually just plug it with like a language model trained in English, and it will give you an unsupervised empty system. So the question here is, how do we do to generate the phrase table in some unsupervised fashion? So what we do is that we took back this unsupervised word translation thing from before, but instead of using word, we use phrases. So the thing is that this, I was telling you, it's not working for sentences because sentence embedding is not something we know how to generate. I mean, not with high quality. But phrase embedding, it's pretty simple because phrases are usually, they have only like 2 or 3 words. So generating embedding a group of 3 words, it's something we know how to do. We can actually just use the same method. So in practice, what we do is that we take some English and Italian, let's say monolingual data sets. we generate phrases inside. So phrases are going to be like the most common bigrams. Like for instance, New York will be a phrase, like San Diego, European Union. All these bigrams and trigrams that appear often in your corpus, you are going to concatenate them together. You will train your embeddings on them using fasttext or something like this. And this will give you some phrase embedding. And given this phrase embedding, you can align them using adversarial training like before, like if it was words. And you can actually do everything we did before for words, but with your phrases. And in the end, you will generate some phrases translations. For instance, in English French, this is what we had. So like if you get heureux, you are going to get some possible candidate translation. And for each of them, you will get some probabilities. So these probabilities, what we do is that we take the distance of heureux with happy in the target space. So we take heureux, we map it to the target space. We compute the distance with heureux to all the nearest neighbor. And we do some softmax on this to get some probabilities. And then we do this in the other way. We take thrilled, project it to the source space, and then we compute the distance with heureux, and we get some like probability of target to source and probability of source to target, etc. And what is nice is that if you take some Union European words like this, you know that you can actually translate this to just one word. So you can actually have a phrase that goes to only one word, and you can actually see like even some words like 27 nation block. The model will know that this actually is equivalent to Union European. Yeah, that's all there is to it. And now if you look at the results, so here we compare with three baselines. So there is this paper of Artech and all, Young and all that were published last year, on our paper from last year as well. So we evaluate a news test, which is like the standard benchmarks for evaluating machine translation systems. So the state of the art in English French was 17. In German, it was not going above 15. So now if you look at the model I just presented just right now, so this one, so you get this, it's like what I call PBSMT0. So here you see that this model is already state-of-the-art everywhere apart from one language. So what is nice is that if you look at these three approaches, all of them are actually pretty complicated neural approaches that take like several days to converge. But this one, the PBSMT thing here, you can actually train it in like a few minutes. You have actually no training at all. You just have to basically map your embeddings to the target space to get this phrase table. So it's state-of-the-art, but it's also very simple to create. And now if you look at the NMT approaches, NMT approach I described before, you get these results. So like in NMT, you get like 25 bleu, which is basically 8 points above the state-of-the-art. So if you make an improvement of 2 bleu, it's usually considered like a huge improvement. So here plus 8 is quite significant. And like in German, we have up to 21 bleu. And now if you take the PBSMT0 here, so this model that you have here, that was actually a French to English model, and that you do this back translation thing I described at the beginning of the talk. So you train a model French to English, then one model English to French, and you reiterate this process. So you get this model, which I call PBSMTN after n iterations, and you get this. So like in English French, you get up to 28 bleu points, which is like 11 bleu points above the state of the art. And then you can actually combine these two approaches, like combining the back translated sentence coming from the phrase-based model and from the NMT model. And in German, you can get actually up to 25 bleu. Yeah, so how does it compare with supervised approaches? So here on this plot, you can see 4 curves. The 2 horizontal ones are the ones that are the performance obtained by the unsupervised approaches. So here you have like the 28 in English French. And these 2 ones here are the supervised model using different amount of parallel sentences. So in blue, you have the NMT, and in red, you have the phrase. So here you can see that with 10,000 sentences, the NMT doesn't work at all. You have like 3 bleu, while the phrase-based model almost has 2 bleu. So the phrase-based, even if it's kind of old, it's actually still pretty powerful for low resource languages. And now you can see that we need basically, so if you look at the unsupervised phrase-based model, you need 100,000 sentence pairs to a model which is as good using supervised approaches. So it means that we can do as well as supervised approaches that are trained on parallel data without parallel data. I mean, assuming that they don't have more than 100,000 parallel sentence pairs. So here is an example of translations that you can get. So if you look at these input sentences, so the first lines here and there, so if you don't speak German, it's actually pretty hard to actually guess the translation, but the model actually can, even if it's not easy sentence, the model can translate this pretty accurately. And what is best is usually to combine the PBSMT output with the NMT output. What happens very often in the phrase-based model is that there are some unknown words. Typically, the phrase-based model is not very good to deal with unknown words. But the NMT model, what it does is that it splits your word into sub-word units. and it's very good at dealing with this. So if you combine these two things, you actually get the best possible results. And yeah, that's it. And yeah,